Picture yourself lying beneath a deep night sky, where stars that have flickered for millennia blink like coded messages, written long before you were born. The wind blows softly, carrying with it an almost imperceptible murmur, as if ancient voices were trying to reach your ears through time. In this moment, the present dissolves, and you realize you're no longer alone in the night. For centuries, millions of human minds have reflected on the same fears, doubts, and hopes that now keep you awake. What you're about to hear is more than just a story. It's an echo that has crossed the desert of history to find you on this exact early morning. The ancients believed that wisdom didn't belong to any one person, but was a river that flowed eternally, and each generation could drink from it. This image challenges the modern notion that knowledge is something we accumulate alone, as if it were a personal achievement. In our fast-paced world, we forget that much of what we know was thought, felt, and lived by those who came before, in caves, temples, libraries, and distant marketplaces. It's unsettling to realize that our greatest questions might not be as original as we think. The meaning of this idea runs deep. What we feel now, someone has felt before. What we fear now, someone has feared before. There's a quiet comfort in that, but also a slight discomfort, realizing that maybe our internal battles aren't as unique as we thought. In this moment, we're no longer just isolated individuals in time, but participants in a conversation that began long before we existed. The Whisper of Millennia is both intimate and impersonal. This perspective fits perfectly within the context of this video, which seeks to rewrite ancient lessons for modern minds. Here, we don't speak of wisdom as a dusty relic, but as a flame that still burns, even during sleepless nights. The question that remains is, are we ready to hear it, even if it challenges us? Think about a 2,000-year-old manuscript, written in a dead language, hidden in a cave until found by chance. The words, despite time, still speak of love, loss, courage, and fear, as if the author were writing for us, here and now. This is the essence of the Whisper of Millennia, messages that cross eras, adapting to new minds while preserving their essence. Greek philosophers spoke of anamnesis, the act of remembering something the soul already knew. In a way, when we read an ancient thought and it resonates deeply, it's not like learning something new, but like recalling something forgotten. This mysterious connection between past and present is what gives ancient ideas their almost timeless power. Similarly, it's as if we're tuning into a radio frequency that's been transmitting since the dawn of civilization. The message might be veiled or fragmented, but it carries energy that forces us to stop, breathe, and listen. And the quieter our mind becomes, the clearer it gets. If every thought we have has already been thought, what does that say about our creative freedom? For some, this is limiting. We're just repeating pre-existing ideas. For others, it's liberating. We're part of something much bigger, a collective body of wisdom that transcends time. In this paradox lies the tension between originality and continuity. There's also an ethical aspect. If we inherit centuries of knowledge, we have the responsibility to use it well. Ignoring the lessons of the past can condemn us to repeat the same mistakes, wars, injustices, destroying the planet. On the other hand, reinterpreting this knowledge through new lenses allows us to create something more just and conscious. And perhaps the most unsettling implication is this. When seeking answers, we might discover that the greatest challenge isn't finding them, but accepting them. Ancient wisdom, when adapted to the present, isn't a sweet comfort, but an unforgiving mirror that reveals what we'd rather not see. And so, as we close our eyes and listen to the whisper of millennia, we realize that each thought is a link in an infinite chain. But soon the first great lesson emerges. If wisdom is a river, then the amount of water we drink can be just as vital as the clarity of that water. And this is where we enter the paradox of choice, where abundance can be just as paralyzing as scarcity. We live in an era of abundant choices, from what to eat to life paths, careers, and relationships. While the freedom to choose is celebrated, it can generate anxiety and feelings of paralysis, especially in overloaded modern minds. This paradox challenges the perception that more options mean more freedom, inviting us to reflect on the nature of human decision-making. Historically, ancient societies offered limited choices, and paradoxically, many accounts indicate greater contentment and clarity of purpose. The limitation of alternatives allowed for focus and introspection, something the modern mind rarely experiences. Recognizing this contrast is essential to understanding why excess choices today often lead to dissatisfaction and regret. The contemporary relevance of the choice paradox lies in its effect on sleep and peace of mind. Every daily decision carries weight, and overload can generate recurring thoughts, insomnia, and anxiety. Understanding this phenomenon prepares us to explore ways to lighten the burden of choice and find clarity amid multiplicity. The concept has been studied by psychologists like Barry Schwartz, who demonstrated that more options don't always produce more happiness. Imagine an infinite bookshelf. Each choice implies giving up hundreds of others, creating a feeling of potential regret. This scenario translates the complexity of modern life into visual and psychological terms. Similarly, the choice paradox manifests in food, technology, relationships, and professional decisions. Excess alternatives requires more cognitive energy, increases anxiety, and reduces satisfaction, even when the outcome is positive. Ancient philosophers like Epicurus already suggested that true happiness lies in moderation and conscious choice, not in unlimited multiplicity. Additionally, the paradox forces us to question free will. Are we truly free when every choice can generate regret or anxiety? Cognitive science shows that decision overload activates brain areas associated with stress and worry, suggesting that freedom might be an illusion when the number of options exceeds the human mind's processing capacity. The paradox reveals that more freedom doesn't always bring more happiness. It often generates frustration, regret, and procrastination. The ethics of conscious choice emerges as an alternative, deliberately reducing options and valuing the decision made. Philosophically, it confronts us with the idea that less can be more, and that simplifying our lives is a way to recover peace of mind. Furthermore, the choice paradox reminds us that simple decisions have complex impacts. Each choice defines future experiences, creates behavioral patterns, and influences emotional well-being. Understanding this prepares us to live more consciously and less dominated by excess stimuli and alternatives, especially during quiet nights of reflection. Finally, recognizing the choice paradox allows us to transform anxiety into clarity. The mind learns that not every option needs to be explored, and that value lies in the quality and intention of the decision, not in the quantity of possibilities. This preparation naturally leads us to the next lesson, silence as an answer, where we'll see how the absence of action or words can reveal profound truths. There are moments when every word spoken is like throwing stones into a tranquil lake. The surface gets agitated, and clarity dissipates. Silence, on the contrary, keeps the surface smooth, allowing thoughts and feelings to reveal themselves naturally and profoundly. In ancient traditions, silence wasn't seen as absence, but as complete presence, a space where truth shows itself unhurriedly and without need for explanation. What if, during our sleepless nights and scattered thoughts, it was precisely silence that offered us the answers we seek without realizing? Silence has the power to suspend time, to create space between stimulus and response. It allows us to observe and feel without needing to judge or label. In Taoist cultures, the value of emptiness and silence was comparable to the importance of action. Conscious non-doing reveals life's natural movement. This concept challenges us to perceive that the unsaid can contain deeper meanings than any verbal explanation. The power of silence also manifests in its universality. It transcends language, culture, and era. By adopting it, we open the possibility of hearing not just others, but ourselves, allowing the mind to reorganize and ideas to flow naturally. Taoist sages claimed that nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished. Each cycle occurs in its own time. Zen monks, trained for years, learn to respond to complex questions with just a look or gesture, showing that the absence of words isn't ignorance, but depth. Philosophically, Wittgenstein reminds us that silence is the answer to what cannot be said, highlighting the limitation of words before the vastness of experience. Similarly, in Western philosophy, Socrates valued admitting, "I don't know," as a door to true knowledge. Thus, silence isn't evasion, but an invitation for answers to emerge at the right moment. Imagine wine that breathes. The aroma and flavor transform in the space between opening the bottle and the first sip. The same happens with the mind when we allow ourselves to pause, observe, and simply exist. Silence also functions as a catalyst for perception and introspection. It allows us to absorb patterns, reflect on decisions, and understand complex relationships. When we choose not to fill every void with words, we give space for intuition and inner wisdom to manifest, something the modern mind often ignores amid constant hyperstimulation. In the contemporary world, obsessed with quick opinions and incessant communication, silence becomes almost an act of rebellion. It challenges the impulse to react immediately and the need to fill every space with words. Curiously, by not responding, we can provide the most honest answer, one that respects mystery and complexity. Silence confronts us with our own expectations and anxieties. It creates tension between the desire to control and acceptance of what cannot be forced. Observing the stars, we realize they communicate more through the space that separates them than through the light they emit. Each pause carries meaning, just like every moment of silence in our lives. Accepting silence is, therefore, a practice of courage and discernment. It allows the mind to rest, intuition to flourish, and our decisions to be more aligned with life's essence, not just the urgency of the moment. When silence echoes deeply, we realize that everything returns to the starting point, and each pause is a harbinger of a new beginning. And so, with silence as our guide, we're led to perceive the patterns that repeat in existence. Each pause prepares the mind for life's inevitable flow, naturally taking us to the next learning. The cycle of return, where we'll explore how everything begins again and transforms, in cycles that challenge time and perception. If we observe carefully, we'll notice that life rarely follows a straight line. It bends upon itself, repeats patterns, bringing back faces, situations, and lessons we thought we'd already closed. Ancient cultures perceived that everything moves in cycles: seasons, tides, moon phases, even human destiny itself. The insomnia that visits us today can be seen as a return of the eternal recurrence, a subtle reminder that everything that begins inevitably returns. The concept of return isn't just philosophical, but deeply experiential. Heraclitus, speaking about constant flux and change, reminds us that nothing remains still. Everything transforms and returns in recognizable and mysterious ways. Thus, each experience we consider unique already contains echoes of past events, and, in a way, prepares the ground for them to repeat in the future, under new perspectives. Observing these patterns invites us to open our eyes to the hidden harmony in repetition. The perception that life is cyclical offers us the opportunity to learn, grow, and anticipate returns, transforming each turn into a chance for awareness and reflection. In Stoic philosophy and the Hindu doctrine of samsara, the cycle is existence's essence. Birth, death, rebirth, everything returns. Nietzsche, centuries later, would speak of eternal return, the idea that each lived experience has already happened and will happen again, inviting us to live with attention and presence. Nature also reveals the wisdom of cycles. Leaves fall so new ones can sprout. Rivers evaporate only to become rain. Each cycle brings transformation, even if the essence remains recognizable. We can compare it to walking through a labyrinth that folds upon itself. Each turn presents new landscapes and challenges, but the central path remains, allowing experience to transform as we change internally. The cycle of return, therefore, isn't just mechanical repetition. It's an opportunity for revision, reflection, and evolution. Each return carries the potential to reveal aspects that went unnoticed, offering a new perspective on old situations, memories, or recurring challenges. The cycle of return challenges the idea of a definitive end and invites us to see life as continuous flow. Each return isn't destiny's failure, but an opportunity for learning and transformation. Asking, "Why did this come back?" becomes less relevant than perceiving, "What can I still learn here?" Accepting this flow transforms repetition into dance and restart into freedom. When we understand that each returning challenge or memory is an opportunity to observe and evolve, we begin to perceive patterns, connections, and lessons that previously went unnoticed. This understanding frees us from the anxiety of controlling every detail, showing that life unfolds in inevitable and mysterious cycles. By recognizing that everything returns, we also find serenity. The perception of cycle prepares us for the next lesson. No matter how much we try to guide every step, there's always something that escapes our control. The illusion of control reveals itself, and true wisdom lies in navigating with awareness, acceptance, and lightness. And in this dance between departures and returns, we realize that life has flows that escape our will. Thus, we approach the next reflection, the illusion of control, where we'll explore how accepting the inevitability of external forces allows us to better navigate existence's flow. We spend much of life believing we're in command. We plan, predict, shape agendas, as if we could determine every detail of tomorrow. But one unexpected event is enough for this feeling to dissolve like smoke, revealing the fragility of our certainties. Ancient philosophers and spiritual traditions warned, control is a thin thread, easy to break. Perhaps our obsession with dominating everything is exactly what prevents us from living fully. The perception of control is comforting, but often deceptive. Baruch Spinoza already defended that we're part of universal determinism, and the idea of absolute command is an illusion. Schopenhauer reminded us that human will constantly collides with destiny, while Epictetus in Stoicism taught distinguishing between what we can and cannot control. This segment invites us to reflect. What if letting go of control is actually the path to freedom? Accepting that life has its own intelligence, independent of our plans, challenges our modern anxiety. The perception of control keeps us alert and restless, but also distances us from serenity. This philosophical awakening proposes a new perspective. We're not conductors of a universal orchestra, but dancers to the rhythm of music that's already playing, learning to hear its pauses and accents. Stoics advise distinguishing between what's under our power and what isn't, a thin line we often ignore. In Taoism, life's natural flow should be followed, and resistance is seen as a source of suffering. Trying to hold the uncontrollable is like trying to catch water with our hands. The more force we use, the faster it escapes. Even modern science confirms the unpredictability of complex systems, like weather, economy, or the human mind itself. Despite this, we insist on believing we can command every detail, like conductors of a symphony that actually plays by itself. This tension between illusion and reality reveals the fragility of human perception and challenges us to reconsider the meaning of control in our daily lives. By understanding that absolute control is impossible, we open space to act with discernment. The choice isn't to dominate everything, but to recognize the boundary between effort and acceptance. This understanding transforms our relationship with the world. We start investing energy in what we can actually influence and let go of what exceeds our capacity, building balance and serenity. When we release the illusion of control, we don't fall into chaos, we fall into reality. Anxiety is born from trying to command the uncontrollable, and serenity arises from accepting what's inevitable. By allowing the world to follow its course, we understand that our actions have impact only within real limits, while the universe maintains its own rhythm. In practice, this surrender isn't passivity, but clarity. In Insomnia, for example, we realize sleep doesn't come on command. It manifests at the right moment. This lesson also applies to life's events. Accepting the uncontrollable doesn't mean giving up, but acting with awareness and presence, responding to the flow instead of fighting against it.
Thus, control stops being a burden and becomes a more conscious concept. We guide what we can and embrace what escapes, dancing with life without losing ourselves in the illusion of total command. This understanding prepares the ground for the next insight, perceiving that time doesn't flow linearly, but curves in invisible spirals, challenging our perception and inviting reflection on time's nature.
And it's by releasing the reins that we perceive something deeper. Time doesn't run in a straight line, but curves in invisible spirals, leading us to contemplate time as a spiral, where we'll see how ancient concepts of time intertwine with our modern anxieties. Modern perception of time as a straight line makes us believe that each moment is unique and unrepeatable, but ancient civilizations conceived time cyclically. The spiral is a powerful metaphor. It advances, but returns upon itself, allowing each experience to be revisited with new eyes. This perspective transforms the feeling of repetition or insomnia into an opportunity for contemplation, revealing subtle patterns that hide in daily life. Living consciously aware of spiral time means perceiving that the past never completely disappears, and that each turn offers learning and maturation. By perceiving life's movement as circular, our anxiety about the future or regret about the past softens. What if our sleepless nights weren't mere episodes of wakefulness, but silent invitations to recognize that our experiences return, adjusted by new perspectives, in an invisible dance of time? For the Maya, time was a sacred cycle, full of meaningful repetitions, like seasons and planetary movements. In Hinduism, the yugas describe eras that renew infinitely, while Jung emphasized recurring patterns in the psyche, providing new opportunities for integration. Each cycle is like climbing a spiral staircase, revisiting the same point, but gaining a new perspective with each turn. This understanding reveals that life doesn't progress only in a straight line. It bends and extends, allowing us to understand past experiences under new lenses. The spiral isn't linear, but dynamic, combining repetition and transformation simultaneously. Even nature reflects this logic. Leaves fall and sprout, rivers evaporate and return as rain. Each return is different, but familiar, teaching that life is constant movement and renewal, and that time is more perception than sequence of events. Seeing time as a spiral changes our relationship with mistakes, losses, and new beginnings. Nothing is irreversible. Each return is a chance for learning and maturation. Modern anxiety about constant progress diminishes when we realize that walking in larger circles allows deeper understanding than walking in a straight line. The spiral's turns reveal that past memories and experiences don't imprison us, but become recurring lessons awaiting new interpretation. Repetition in this sense isn't monotony, but an opportunity for continuous growth and refinement of consciousness. During wakeful nights, when old thoughts resurface, we can understand that we're not trapped by them. We're completing another turn in the spiral, ready to integrate them with renewed clarity, accepting time as a living and conscious flow. Surrender is often confused with weakness, but in truth, it's a profound act of consciousness. Recognizing that forces greater than our personal will exist allows us to rest from the constant internal struggle. Ancient Eastern masters and Western philosophers saw in surrender the path to mental clarity and inner peace, especially in moments of uncertainty. During sleepless nights, the mind often resists the inevitable, and it's in this space that surrender reveals its silent power. Accepting that not everything is under our control can become a source of profound relief. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means aligning with life's natural flow, perceiving that it's not always necessary to dominate every circumstance. It's the courage to allow events to follow their course, trusting that there's learning even in the unexpected. When contemplating the world with this perspective, each challenge becomes an opportunity to explore patience, perception, and inner wisdom. The act of surrendering is therefore paradoxical. While society values constant action and domination over the environment, true strength is found in letting go, observing, and allowing. This posture transforms anxiety into full attention, offering an alternative to the constant struggle for control. It's the art of moving with the universe, instead of against it. In Taoism, Lao Tzu taught that yielding to the river's natural flow allows advancement without resistance, demonstrating that true strength isn't in fighting the inevitable. Epictetus, from Stoicism, affirmed that serenity arises from accepting what we cannot change, highlighting that surrender is a strategy for the mind, not passivity. Surrender is like navigating a boat in invisible currents. The more you fight, the more energy you lose. The more you flow, the more you advance efficiently and consciously. Nature exemplifies this wisdom constantly. Wind contours mountains, rivers divert around stones, and plant growth follows its course, unhurriedly, but with certain results. Surrender is understanding these universal laws and applying them to one's own life, recognizing limits and accepting impermanence. It's allowing experience to unfold without excessive interference, trusting the world's natural rhythm. Even in modern contexts, surrender maintains relevance. Complex systems like climate, economy, or human relations cannot be fully controlled. Understanding and flowing with these forces is the essence of practical wisdom. By learning to surrender, we discover that effective action doesn't depend on absolute dominion, but on conscious alignment with circumstances and opportunities that arise. Surrender challenges the contemporary mentality that glorifies control and incessant action. Accepting that we cannot dominate everything confronts our need for security and predictability. Anxiety often stems from trying to manipulate the uncontrollable, and surrender offers freedom by perceiving that certain forces are beyond our reach. It's in this space that a paradoxical form of power is found. Acting with consciousness and serenity, even facing uncertainty. Accepting natural flow also places us before existential dilemmas. We are, simultaneously, agents and observers. This awareness expands life's perception, allowing cycles, losses, and returns to be understood as learning opportunities and not just obstacles. When applying this vision to the restless mind during insomnia, each moment of unrest transforms into an experience of silent contemplation. The silence of surrender reveals a central paradox. By letting go, we gain strength. By not controlling, we find clarity. Surrender doesn't eliminate challenges, but alters how we perceive them, making us conscious participants in life's flow. In the modern context, this understanding offers an antidote to constant stress and mental overload, showing that true strength and acceptance aren't opposites, but complementary. When we allow ourselves to surrender, we open space for silent creativity and the potential of emptiness, preparing the ground for the next learning, how nothingness, absence, and inner space can become sources of creation and renewal. The void awakens fear as it confronts us with apparent absence, absolute silence, and the unknown. However, in many ancient traditions, it's understood as a point of origin, a fertile place of infinite possibilities. Before any form or manifestation, there existed the blank space, silent, where everything could emerge. Looking at the void isn't facing the end, but recognizing the cradle of ideas and experiences not yet born. Thus, the void becomes a portal, an invitation to explore what hasn't yet been imagined. The void, paradoxically, is intense presence in its own absence. It demands patience, attention, and receptivity. Sleepless nights can be understood as small encounters with this silent space, moments when our mind slows down and faces the vastness of possibilities hidden between thoughts and memories. It's in this interval, where the mind finds resonance with quietude, that creative potential begins to move invisibly, subtly, but powerfully. The void also challenges modern anxiety, which fears idleness and non-doing. Instead of haste, it suggests contemplation. Instead of control, surrender. By accepting silence and absence, we open space for unexpected ideas, unlikely solutions, and profound insights to emerge. It teaches us that creation doesn't require immediate form, that the birth of something new often begins in terrain of uncertainty and calm, a space the contemporary mind usually avoids. In Taoist philosophy, the void is understood as the origin and destiny of all things, the point from which everything emerges and to which everything returns. It's the primordial, silent, invisible, but indispensable flow. Zen paintings use empty space as an essential element. Ink defines form, but the surrounding void creates meaning. Without nothingness, nothing perceptible would make sense. It's in the contrast between presence and absence that existence's depth is revealed. Modern science also recognizes the void's fertility. The concept of quantum vacuum shows that apparently empty space is full of fluctuations and latent energy, ready to generate particles and events. Similarly, an artist's blank canvas is rich in potential. Before any stroke or color, the space contains infinite possible worlds. Each creative decision is a manifestation of what the void allowed to emerge, and each gesture depends on its counterposition to the surrounding nothingness. Nietzsche and Heidegger reflected on this void in existential and philosophical ways. For Nietzsche, Nihilism opens the possibility of creating new values and meanings. For Heidegger, being reveals itself in relation to the void, to what isn't yet determined. Thus, the void isn't mere absence, but an active field, a space where potential and consciousness meet. It reminds us that creation and life rest on both what is and what hasn't yet manifested. The creative void challenges the notion of immediate productivity and the urgency to fill every space in our lives. Pauses, silences, and moments of doubt aren't failures, but incubators of something new. The paradox is clear. It's in apparent absence that the most fertile potential is found, and in nothingness hides the principle of what's to come. The restless mind, learning to inhabit the void, discovers that silence can be more active than incessant noise. In our society, which values quick results and instant answers, the void invites us to slow down and observe. It shows that creativity doesn't arise from excess stimuli, but from the capacity to listen, wait, and perceive subtleties. Even insomnia, often feared, can become a fertile field where old thoughts dissolve and give space to new perspectives, ideas, and insights, like seeds sleeping in the night soil. The philosophical implication is profound. Living with the void is recognizing that life doesn't need to be immediately filled, and that potential exists before form. Absence, far from being failure, is space for freedom and possibility. By accepting and valuing the void, we can transform moments of uncertainty, anxiety, or boredom into opportunities for growth, contemplation, and creative renewal, opening paths to something we didn't yet know existed. And when we begin to inhabit the void, we realize that all creation is in relation to something that completes or challenges it. It's in this contrast, in the dance between presence and absence, that the next lesson arises. The eternal dance between light and shadow, which invites us to perceive how opposites coexist in harmony. Everything that exists carries its opposite, and it's from the friction between differences that life finds rhythm. In Taoism, Yin and Yang don't wage war. They spin, alternate, and contain each other mutually like tide and moon. Carl Jung observed the same within the psyche. Consciousness shines because there's shadow outlining its contours. Heraclitus sensed this choreography when he said the path up and down is the same. What if maturity were learning to dance with what we once tried to expel? The idea disturbs because we were trained to choose sides, to fix labels, to decide who wins and who loses. But night doesn't defeat day, it just prepares it. Quietude doesn't cancel movement, it offers cadence. When we accept that opposites are partners, rigidity yields and perspective broadens. Anxiety about controlling each step softens, and space emerges to hear the greater rhythm. This dance appears in the world's skin and the mind's interior. There's tenderness in the beginning's chaos and rigor in the order that organizes the end. A clear thought is born from previous confusions. A full silence is born after excess voices. Denying one pole impoverishes us. Embracing it makes us whole. Perhaps the secret isn't conquering shadow, but inviting it to talk. Taoism describes the universe as flow that alternates softness and firmness, retraction and expansion. The Taiji symbol shows opposite drops spinning, each with the other's point at the center, reminding that no pole is pure. In practical terms, rest gives power to work, limits protect freedom, vulnerability sustains courage. Like the bow that only launches the arrow by balancing contrary forces, we advance when combining tensions. Jung translated this principle inward. The shadow holds talents, desires, and memories we reject. Integrating it isn't yielding to darkness, but recognizing forgotten vital energy. An example: the nice person who explodes in irritation doesn't need to suppress anger, but listen to it to transform it into assertiveness. Light grows when shadow is named. Shadow weakens when it has a place at the table. Heraclitus saw reality as living fire maintained by opposite tensions. Think of a stringed instrument. If you loosen too much, it silences. If you tighten too much, it breaks. Music is born from just conflict. In daily life, this appears when we combine discipline and lightness, planning and improvisation. A simple mental experiment. Imagine a world without contrast. Only light or only silence. Without opposition, there's no form, no meaning, no melody. Accepting the dance of opposites changes daily ethics. Instead of pursuing immaculate peace, we cultivate dynamic peace. We recognize that storms irrigate, winters mature roots, pauses save projects. Internally, admitting contradictions makes us less fragile and more truthful. Stability then stops being rigidity and becomes elasticity that supports changes. A fertile paradox emerges. By embracing shadow, light stops being fragile. By embracing chaos, order becomes more intelligent. This deconstructs the rush for definitive solutions and opens space for processes. During sleepless nights, this alternation is clear: silence and mental noise, fatigue and lucidity, fear and insight. Instead of fighting wakefulness, one can accompany the step, breathe with it, let the whirlwind decelerate by being heard. There are social and ethical implications too. Less polarization, more synthesis, less cancellation, more dialogue between differences. Learning from the opposite doesn't relativize values, but makes them three-dimensional. In science and art, tensions generate discovery. In relationships, differences generate growth. The question stops being, how do I eliminate the opposite? And becomes, how do I integrate it without losing myself? When the gaze gets used to contrast, we find a presence that, though feared, offers rare precision. Death as counselor. It cuts excesses, denounces illusions, returns measure to time. It doesn't invite despair, but the lucidity of one who chooses carefully. Thus, from the game between light and shadow is born a clarity that isn't cold, but alive. Mortality, when faced without denial, teaches priorities, simplifies dramas, strengthens gratitude. Each heartbeat becomes audible. Each gesture gains clarity. And it's with this clarity, born from the dance of opposites, that we cross the next threshold. We let night speak to us without shouting, and day illuminate us without blinding. On the margin between both, an ancient voice whispers, "Listen to finitude, and you'll understand the moment's value." The next lesson begins with this listening. Among all the certainties we carry, only one remains unshakable. One day, our journey will come to an end. Far from being a shadow to avoid, this truth has been, for millennia, a source of clarity and strength. In pre-Columbian Mexico, death was invited to the party. In samurai traditions, it was remembered each dawn as an exercise in courage. It wasn't about a cult of tragedy, but a silent pact with reality. By facing it head-on, the ancients learned to live more intensely, like those who know the value of each heartbeat. Michel de Montaigne said that, to meditate on death is to meditate on freedom. By accepting that the end is inevitable, we free ourselves from the weight of uncertain tomorrow and begin to inhabit today with more presence. This isn't a posture of resignation, but of lucidity. A lucidity that cuts like a blade, reminding us that wasting a day is wasting a piece of the little time we have left. Cultivating this awareness is like carrying a torch in the middle of night. It doesn't chase away darkness, but illuminates the path. In many cultures, death isn't seen as life's opposite, but as its inseparable partner. In Buddhist philosophy, it's the teacher that shows us detachment. In Christianity, a portal to eternity. For Greek philosophers, a natural destiny, as inevitable as sunrise. When we look at it without fear's veil, we perceive that its constant presence isn't a threat, but an invitation. An invitation to live with more truth, courage, and depth. In Stoic philosophy, memento mori, remember death, wasn't a morbid thought, but a vital reminder. For Seneca, it was the antidote against procrastination. For Marcus Aurelius, the key to maintaining humility. Carl Jung saw consciousness of finitude as a catalyst for individuation. Only by recognizing that time is finite does the human being feel called to become who they really are. Heraclitus, in turn, said that life and death are just two names for the same flow and constant transformation. When we stop fearing death and start seeing it as counselor, something changes in how we perceive the present. Small things gain new weight. A hug that could have been postponed is given now. Words of gratitude are said before they become impossible. Finitude functions as a filter, separating essential from trivial, true from passing. And in this filter, we find a purer way of living. Even in art and literature, this theme returns as constant echo. Heidegger called this posture being toward death, not as obsession, but as a state of consciousness that colors all choices. Epicurus taught that we shouldn't fear death, because while we're alive, it doesn't exist. And when it arrives, we're no longer here. The lesson is clear. It's not death we should fear, but the unlived life. Accepting death as an inevitable part of life doesn't make us cold, but more attentive and grateful. Each morning gains the lightness of an unrepeatable gift, and each goodbye becomes an act of love, not haste. This awareness also helps us put pain in perspective. Problems that seemed insurmountable shrink before the urgency to live. It's as if death taught us the art of relativizing, of not wasting time on what doesn't matter. Insomnia, in this sense, is a silent metaphor. Spending hours awake, watching time slip by without control, reminds us that each lost minute is irrecoverable. Just like death, insomnia invites us to face our vulnerability, to perceive that we don't have absolute dominion over our time, and that precisely because of this, we must use it wisely. Deep down, the invisible counselor doesn't ask for great feats, but small acts of courage, forgiving before it's too late, loving without reservations, telling the truth without delay. She whispers to us that living isn't accumulating days, but filling them with meaning, and that the only truly living moment is now. And when we accept that each moment has its own rhythm, we also learn the lesson of another invisible master, one who teaches us that it's not haste that leads us, but patience. It's the art of waiting that will reveal in the next step the power of trusting in the right timing of things. In modern life, impatience has become an almost natural habit, amplified by constant notifications and instant results. Lao Tzu reminds us that nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished, showing that waiting isn't an obstacle, but part of life's flow. Each pause contains a silent opportunity for learning, a space to observe what truly matters. Kierkegaard emphasized that patient existence allows us to mature in the tension between desire and reality. Waiting, then, is a silent master, shaping consciousness in invisible ways. Waiting challenges us to abandon the need to control every moment and trust in the natural process of things. We realize that each moment has its time, and that rushing doesn't create real growth. This acceptance transforms perception. External inactivity isn't emptiness, but concentrated attention on internal movement. Patience connects us with broader rhythms that transcend daily immediacy, revealing there's wisdom in allowing life to unfold. Waiting doesn't mean stagnation. It's a space for reflection and openness to the unexpected. By attuning ourselves to this rhythm, we discover that life reveals itself in subtle layers, often invisible to hurried eyes. Each moment of pause can be fertile, providing insights and clarity that wouldn't emerge under pressure. Patience transforms time into an ally rather than an adversary, preparing the mind to perceive existence's next movement. Taoism teaches the concept of wu wei, acting without forcing, flowing with the right timing of events. This philosophy suggests that harmonious action emerges when we don't fight against life's natural course. Each stone, each curve of the river, represents obstacles that don't need to be fought, just understood and integrated into the flow. Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us that mindful attention transforms waiting into an active mindfulness practice. Observing the present moment without anxiety reveals a richness that goes unnoticed when we chase after results. This way, each pause stops being empty and becomes a fertile field for introspection, creativity, and sensitive perception of the world. The practice of waiting is also reflected in nature. Trees germinate slowly, flowers bloom in the right season, rivers follow their path unhurriedly. Each process follows its time, even when invisible to the anxious observer. Recognizing this cadence helps us understand that patience is a vital component for acting with clarity and effectiveness, without wasting energy on unnecessary haste. Practicing waiting reveals a paradox. The less we try to control, the more we align with life's natural flow. This alignment isn't passivity, but active presence, where each moment of pause is potential for conscious action. Insomnia, in this context, becomes a metaphor. Not forcing sleep is learning to dialogue with time, recognizing limits, and accepting what can't be controlled. Each moment of silent wakefulness can be a space for inner growth, incubating ideas, emotions, and understanding that will manifest when the right rhythm arrives. Accepting active waiting leads us to paradoxical freedom. The more we trust in time, the more capable we become of acting with precision and serenity. Each moment becomes full, revealing that patience doesn't delay life, but makes it richer, deeper, and more meaningful. By accepting that patience, mindfulness, and silent presence shape our experience, we realize there are treasures that can't be bought or accumulated. It's in this space of attention and surrender that true wealth is born, an inner abundance that transcends the material and connects us to life's essence. Recognizing these invisible treasures prepares the ground for the next learning, discovering values that reveal themselves only when we give up possessing and allow ourselves to simply live. True wealth isn't measured by gold or possessions, but by experiences, wisdom, and life's meaning. Saint Francis of Assisi showed that renunciation and simplicity can reveal inner treasures greater than any material wealth. Epicurus, in turn, taught that simple pleasures and absence of suffering bring lasting satisfaction. Viktor Frankl reminded us that finding meaning in life is a wealth no fortune can buy. This perception challenges our modern obsession with accumulating and controlling. The paradox of invisible wealth is that the more we try to possess it, the more it escapes. However, when we consciously cultivate it, it flourishes and transforms our experience. It's like contemplating a distant star. We can't possess it, but its light influences our perception, giving us guidance and inspiration. Invisible wealth is a silent force, present even in moments of greatest restlessness. The idea also provokes unease. In a world that measures success by goods and status, Accepting that what matters can't be bought requires courage. Perhaps insomnia and moments of deep silence reveal this, showing that our greatest treasures aren't outside, but within ourselves, waiting to be recognized. Invisible wealth resides in intangible qualities: mindfulness, gratitude, presence, and purpose. St. Francis of Assisi saw renunciation as a path to discovering true abundance. Epicurus taught that pleasure lies in simple things and absence of pain, not in accumulating goods. Viktor Frankl emphasized that finding meaning in the face of suffering transforms life into something profoundly valuable. Analogies help us understand. An old book, a song, or a meaningful memory can't be possessed, but they transform our interior. So it is with invisible wealth, intangible, but effective in shaping our life experience and bringing lasting fulfillment. Stories of sages and spiritual practitioners show that by renouncing the material, we acquire inner freedom and mental clarity. Modern positive psychology confirms that gratitude, compassion, and mindfulness promote lasting well-being. Cultivating invisible wealth is both a philosophical and practical exercise, shaping our way of perceiving and interacting with the world. Accepting that true wealth is invisible challenges social and cultural conventions that value material goods and status. Redefining prosperity requires courage and patience, as society constantly reminds us of the value of possessing and accumulating. Invisible wealth also reveals a paradox. The more we try to control, measure, or possess, the further we move away from it. It's cultivated in mindfulness, detachment, and appreciation of the present moment, qualities that can't be bought, only lived. In practice, moments of insomnia or silent contemplation become metaphors for this lesson. They show that seeking external wealth is illusory, while cultivating experience, meaning, and inner presence transforms daily life into something precious. Recognizing invisible wealth prepares us for the next lesson, expanding our perspective, seeing our problems in light of the cosmos, and learning from the silent immensity that surrounds us. Observing the night sky displaces us from daily urgency, revealing a scale that transcends our personal dramas. Each star, each constellation, seems to whisper that our crises are only tiny fragments of a larger narrative. This silent perception, though simple, challenges the mind. Recognizing the cosmos's vastness is also recognizing our fragility and, paradoxically, our freedom. Looking up invites us to ponder, breathe, and place our fears under a broader light. Observing stars displaces us from ego and routine. Each point of light is a reminder that our concerns, however urgent, are small before the universal scale. This awareness doesn't diminish life, but adds depth to experience, offering healthy distance to reflect on choices, fears, and desires. It's like hearing a whisper from the universe, a silent invitation to reposition our perspective. Cosmic contemplation is also an exercise in humility. It confronts us with the inevitable question, what really matters? This shift in focus isn't escape, but expansion. By integrating this vision, daily life transforms, allowing us to act with more serenity and less attachment to existence's immediate drama. Cosmic perspective alters life's emotional perception. Astronomers report a psychological effect called the overview effect, where seeing Earth from space creates a sense of deep connection and diminishes the weight of trivial concerns. Ancient philosophers also explored this idea, suggesting that contemplating the infinite reveals larger proportions and diminishes ego's tyranny. Carl Sagan called Earth a pale blue dot, emphasizing the fragility and preciousness of our existence. The metaphor of a grain of sand before the desert helps understand the scale. Each life, each conflict, and each choice is locally significant, but viewed from space, becomes part of a larger tapestry. This perspective shift doesn't deny individual importance, but contextualizes and relieves the weight of personal drama. The universe, in its vastness, teaches us to balance intensity and serenity. By adopting this vision, we experience a transformative paradox. We perceive our smallness, but this doesn't nullify us. On the contrary, it gives us freedom to act without the burden of absolute judgment. This freedom is like a gentle wind, allowing authentic choices to emerge from silence and contemplation of the infinite. Cosmic insignificance can provoke both relief and unease. Recognizing that our actions don't have eternal repercussions requires courage and authenticity. Paradoxically, the universe's immensity doesn't make us irrelevant, but returns us to the present moment with greater clarity. Each instant becomes a luminous point of active consciousness. This cosmic perspective challenges obsession with control and daily urgency. By perceiving that stars exist independently of our dramas, we learn to act with intention and calm. Choices gain depth and meaning because we understand that each action is a reflection in a vast and interconnected universe, where time and space assume different dimensions from those we imagine. Cosmic contemplation is also an antidote to exaggerated suffering. By recognizing our position in immensity, we learn to release expectations, accept limits, and value the present. The effect is twofold. The mind calms and simultaneously expands, prepared to integrate new life lessons. And if the sky teaches us about our smallness, water teaches us about our depth. Just as a lake reflects the firmament, it also reflects what's hidden within us. It's time to face the water mirror, where liquid silence becomes a tool for discovering the soul's most intimate truths. Throughout centuries, masters and thinkers have reminded us that the true journey is inward. Socrates, with his immortal "Know thyself," planted a seed that crossed millennia, inviting each individual to face their own essence. In a world dominated by external distractions, introspection has become a rare and underestimated practice, yet still essential for understanding the mind's depth. Rumi, in his Sufi poetry, teaches us that well water reflects more than external appearance. It reveals the hidden truth we carry within us. The water mirror isn't just metaphor, it's a silent invitation to inner honesty, to careful observation of what we try to ignore. When we approach a calm lake or tranquil fountain, we notice that the reflection isn't merely superficial. Each ripple, each minimal disturbance in the water, reveals something about the observer's internal state, showing how emotions, thoughts, and memories influence our perception. Introspection works analogously. When we sit in silence, away from external noise, we begin to notice the small internal patterns that shape our choices and reactions. Looking within requires courage and patience. It's necessary to accept that not everything we find will be pleasant. The water mirror reflects light and shadow equally. Fromm observed that many flee from introspection for fear of confronting emptiness, while Rumi reminds us that the wound is the place where the light enters you. This water metaphor teaches us that inner clarity isn't absence of problems, but awareness and presence before them. The more we allow ourselves to face our reflections, the greater our capacity to navigate the world with empathy, serenity, and authenticity. And just as the hourglass reminds us that each moment is unrepeatable, it also reminds us that time isn't a straight line. It's a cycle that leads us back to ourselves, even when we believe we're moving forward. It's in this spiral that another millennial symbol emerges, found in Greek mosaics, medieval engravings, and Eastern meditations: the labyrinth. Unlike a simple path, the labyrinth doesn't deceive by being complicated, but by revealing that every turn is, in fact, a way of leading us to the center. The human mind is a vast and mysterious territory, full of intersecting paths, dead ends, and repeating corridors. From Greek myths to meditation practices and psychological studies, the labyrinth symbolizes the inner journey, showing that self-knowledge isn't linear. Exploring the mind is crossing a space where each thought can take us back to the beginning, challenging our perception of progress. Plato, with his allegory of the cave, already reminded us that perceived reality is only a shadow of what exists deep within ourselves. Walking through this inner labyrinth, we encounter hidden patterns and unconscious impulses that shape our decisions. Freud warned that many mental roots are under unconscious dominion, guiding our fears and desires without our awareness. Carl Jung, in turn, saw symbols, archetypes, and the shadow as essential parts of the psyche, indicating that each mental curve is also an encounter with unknown aspects of ourselves. Each step in this territory reveals that the mind is both map and mystery. Exploration isn't about reaching a final point, but about observing and understanding internal movements. It's in this terrain that we learn that returning to the starting point doesn't mean failure, but opportunity for integration and growth, revealing the richness of a complex and multifaceted psyche. Our memories, emotions, and desires function like corridors and crossroads. Old patterns repeat, unexpected associations emerge, and the right path isn't always clear. Freud taught us that understanding unconscious impulses is essential for navigating this labyrinth, as many mental doors only open when we confront stored fears and traumas. Each return to the beginning is a chance to recognize these patterns and consciously choose how to react. Jung emphasized that integrating the shadow is a fundamental part of the journey, as rejected or unknown aspects contain vitality and essential insights. Each curve, each detour in the inner labyrinth can be seen as an encounter with the deep psyche, revealing archetypes that shape our choices. Thus, the labyrinth transforms into a safe space to explore and reconcile internal contradictions. Plato, in his allegory of the cave, describes the path from ignorance to illumination. Each labyrinth corridor is like the prisoner's ascension, where light isn't always clear and progress is gradual. The mind, like the cave, hides perception layers that are only revealed through patience and observation, showing that understanding oneself is a continuous adventure, full of discoveries and internal confrontations. The inner labyrinth challenges the modern mentality of quick solutions and immediate results. Each unexpected curve requires patience, reflection, and acceptance of the psyche's complexity. Freud reminds us that many internal conflicts only resolve by bringing them to consciousness, while Jung highlights that balance depends on shadow integration. Philosophically, the labyrinth shows that the mind is both map and territory. There's no universal path, and each individual must discover their own route. Plato alerts us that superficial reality perception is limited, and that mental illumination requires courage to face the unknown. The labyrinth paradox, that advancing can mean returning, forces us to rethink the idea of progress. Moreover, each return to the beginning reveals that learning isn't linear. Each curve, each obstacle, and each insight prepares the mind to better understand the whole. Recognizing the psyche as labyrinth allows us to accept uncertainty and complexity, transforming fear and frustration into curiosity and deep understanding. In a world saturated with information, constant notifications, and the accumulation of possessions, simplicity becomes a quiet luxury, almost unreachable. Ancient cultures, from Roman Stoicism to Chinese Taoism, already understood that excess doesn't create freedom, but confusion. By reducing what isn't essential, we create space for mindful attention and clarity, allowing each gesture, thought, and choice to gain meaning. Simplicity isn't deprivation, but an invitation to rediscover the abundance hidden within the essential. Less doesn't mean scarcity, but awareness of what truly matters. Reducing, choosing carefully, and living with less is, paradoxically, an act of fullness. When we detach from excess, we open space for contemplation, creativity, and serenity. This ancient luxury, often forgotten, is an antidote to modern anxiety and the frantic pace of daily life. By observing how philosophers and masters from various traditions cultivated this practice, we realize that simplicity isn't just aesthetic, but also ethical and spiritual. Simplicity, therefore, challenges us to question what we consider valuable. It confronts us with the illusion that possessing is being, and reminds us that true wealth is invisible, found in inner peace, in attention dedicated to the present, and in the freedom of conscious choices. This ancient luxury offers us a compass to navigate modern complexity, revealing that the essential is often what provides us with the greatest depth and meaning. Philosophers like Epicurus argued that happiness doesn't depend on material abundance, but on human relationships, contemplation, and self-control. In Taoism, Wu Wei, acting in harmony with the natural flow, illustrates that often effectiveness lies in avoiding excess, not accumulating it. In the contemporary world, studies on minimalism show that simplified environments reduce anxiety, increase focus, and promote well-being. Minimalism isn't just about objects, but about habits, thoughts, and life choices. Discarding the superfluous allows for a fuller presence, cultivating attention to what's meaningful. It's a practical philosophy, applied to aesthetics as well as psychology and spirituality. The mind becomes more agile, values clearer, and the sense of freedom intensifies. Simplicity reveals that luxury isn't in quantity, but in the depth of each experience. This approach is an invitation to deliberate consciousness. When we choose the essential, we transform everyday life into a quiet work of art, where each action and each possession reflects purpose. The contrast between excess and clarity becomes evident, and the practice of simplicity teaches us that less isn't emptiness, but conscious fulfillment, a path to reconnect with ourselves and the world in a more meaningful way. Adopting simplicity challenges the consumerist paradigm that associates personal worth with the quantity of possessions. Philosophically, it reminds us that true power lies in choice and attention, not in accumulation. Psychologically, reducing external excess allows for deeper introspection and emotional resilience. Spiritually, it opens space for meaningful and authentic experiences. The paradox is that by detaching from the superfluous, we discover genuine wealth, an internal luxury that can't be bought, only cultivated. Simplicity also provokes reflection about priorities and purpose. We question what's essential in our lives, allowing mind and heart to align. In contrast to the accelerated pace of the modern world, it offers a space for breathing, contemplation, and connection. The clarity gained by reducing excess allows us to act more consciously, make decisions more aligned with our values, and notice beauty in things that previously went unnoticed. Finally, this return to the essential reveals that abundance isn't measured by possessions or status, but by presence and mindful attention. Simplicity transforms each moment into an opportunity to live meaningfully, where wealth manifests in experiences, connections, and awareness of what truly matters. It's an ancient practice, but extremely relevant to the challenge of finding balance amidst contemporary chaos. And just as simplicity gives meaning to what remains, the silence between sounds teaches us that pauses are as important as the notes. In the next segment, we'll dive into the silence between the notes, where the unspoken and empty space become powerful messengers of music and life. The silence between notes isn't emptiness, but space charged with meaning. In ancient musical traditions, from Gregorian chant to Eastern classical music, pauses shaped rhythm and amplified the beauty of melodies. Just like music, life benefits from the space between actions and thoughts. It's in the interval that insights, reflections, and moments of clarity emerge. Recognizing the value of silence is understanding that not everything needs to be filled. Emptiness also communicates, teaches, and transforms. Silence invites mindful attention. When we stop filling every instant with stimuli, we notice subtle details that previously went unnoticed: gestures of affection, nuances of thought, deep breaths. It connects us to the present, allowing for a richer and more sensitive perception of the world. The mind, overloaded by sounds and information, finds refuge in silence, where ideas can germinate and creativity manifests unexpectedly. For the psyche, the pause is nourishing. Rumi saw silence as the space where truth reveals itself, while modern thinkers like Erich Fromm emphasize its role in introspection and emotional balance. Silence doesn't just complement life, but structures it, offering rhythm and depth. When we learn to appreciate it, each moment of quietude transforms into learning, contemplation, and a way to harmonize daily chaos. Imagine a symphony without pauses. Each note would sound overloaded, without rhythm or emotion. The same happens with the human mind. Our thoughts and feelings need intervals to organize themselves, process experiences, and generate new ideas. By cultivating conscious pauses, as proposed by ancient philosophies and modern mindfulness practices, we realize that the emptiness between events is as vital as the events themselves. Silence also allows for perception and emotional refinement. In music, pauses amplify the following notes. In life, moments of quietude allow decisions and reflections to gain greater clarity. John Cage, the composer of silence, demonstrated that the absence of sound creates space for hearing in unexpected ways. Thus, silence is productive, stimulating creativity, discernment, and appreciation of the present moment. Furthermore, silent introspection is a tool for self-knowledge. By stopping filling every second with action, we learn to perceive internal patterns, hidden fears, and desires. André Gide and other thinkers showed that emptiness is fertile, capable of revealing what's hidden. Silence, therefore, isn't merely a pause. It's an active space of transformation and growth, where mind and heart find resonance. The paradox of silence is that the more we cultivate it, the more we notice its content. In the modern world, we're constantly bombarded by sounds, notifications, and visual stimuli, forgetting to listen to our own mind. By embracing silence, we discover subtle layers of experience, small emotions, forgotten thoughts, and meaningful gestures that enrich our perception of life. Philosophically, silence teaches that absence is also presence, that emptiness has form, and that pauses are as productive as actions. It challenges the contemporary obsession with constant productivity and fills space invisibly, offering clarity, introspection, and balance. Silence becomes an ally, allowing thoughts and emotions to settle before taking form and guiding us toward more conscious decisions. Spiritually, silence is a bridge between the external world and internal depth. It connects us to ancient wisdom, reminding us that not everything needs to be done or filled to exist. By recognizing it, we learn to value life's natural rhythm, where pause and action coexist in harmony, creating space for contemplation, creativity, and emotional balance. And just as silence between notes reveals depth and rhythm, we also realize we carry another invisible weight, the mask we wear daily. In the next segment, we'll explore the weight of the mask, where authenticity and appearance intertwine, challenging us to confront who we really are. From ancient Greek tragedies to medieval courts, humanity has always understood that we wear masks to navigate the world. They protect, hide vulnerabilities, and help maintain harmonious relationships, ensuring some control over how we're perceived. However, when the mask becomes more real than our own face, we feel a silent weight, as if an invisible barrier separates us from our essence. This burden manifests in internal disconnection and difficulties with intimacy. The challenge is recognizing the role we play without losing touch with who we really are. Social masks don't arise just from malice or convenience. They're reflections of cultural norms, expectations, and hierarchies. Each gesture, each chosen word, each calculated silence builds a persona that allows us to move through the world, but that can also imprison us. Historically, in royal courts, physical masks indicated status and function. Today, they've reinvented themselves in digital forms or subtle ways in daily interactions. Thus, the weight of the mask is both invisible and omnipresent, silently shaping relationships and thoughts. Recognizing this tension is a first step toward consciousness. The weight of the mask doesn't need to be completely eliminated, but understood. Learning to dance between the authentic self and the social persona is a practice of delicate balance. Authenticity doesn't mean rejecting the world, but knowing how to navigate it without losing ourselves, cultivating an internal space of truth and integrity that keeps us connected to ourselves, even in challenging external contexts. Carl Jung described the persona as the face we show the world, distinct from the true self, a necessary social filter, but potentially limiting. Each interaction requires subtle adjustments, words, gestures, and attitudes calibrated to match external expectations. Historically speaking, physical masks were symbols of status and function. Today, they manifest digitally on social media or in how we present our public self. Constantly carrying the mask is like wearing invisible armor that, while protective, also tires and distances us from our authentic interior. Irving Goffman expanded this idea in the concept of social theater, suggesting that we all play various roles depending on the audience. The persona is adaptive and strategic, but when it becomes dominant, it can obscure genuine values, desires, and emotions. This conflict between the need for social acceptance and internal authenticity is an ancient and universal dilemma, reflecting the tension between social survival and personal freedom. Friedrich Nietzsche also reflected on this theme, warning that many get lost in masks that imitate external ideals, forgetting their own self. The persona is necessary to exist in society, but its excess generates alienation. The analogy is powerful. Wearing a mask daily is like carrying an invisible weight that shapes each decision, each reaction, and each relationship, requiring awareness to balance protection and internal truth. Living exclusively through the mask creates profound paradoxes. The more we seek to please, the further we distance ourselves from who we are. Psychologically, this can generate anxiety, exhaustion, and loss of meaning. The individual begins reacting to external stimuli, shaped by expectations, while their essence remains neglected. Philosophically, we question whether we're truly free or mere actors of social conventions, prisoners of the role we play. Recognizing the weight of the mask opens space for conscious freedom. When we identify areas where our persona predominates, we can consciously choose when to use it, when to suspend the role, and when to allow ourselves to be authentic. The practice of authenticity is a delicate dance, maintaining balance between social adaptation and internal integrity. This awareness is essential for healthy relationships, creativity, and emotional well-being. The mask also teaches us about empathy. Understanding others' need to wear masks helps us interact with more patience and compassion. The final paradox is that recognizing the mask, both our own and others, can be liberating. Accepting the social role without sacrificing authenticity strengthens presence and clarity, preparing us for more conscious choices. And if we courageously remove the mask, we notice paths we never dared explore. The next segment, The Road Never Taken, invites us to follow uncharted routes, challenging the safety of the known and revealing the value of courage in life's journey. Throughout history, great discoveries and personal transformations occurred when someone dared to deviate from the common path. The road never taken symbolizes choices that challenge conventions, expectations, and internal fears. It's an invitation to courage, following unknown trails, where there are no maps or guarantees, but potential for growth and self-knowledge. This metaphor crosses cultures and eras, reminding us that comfort often traps us, and that true expansion comes from calculated risk and willingness to explore the new. Following an uncharted road is also an exercise in mindful attention. Each decision becomes meaningful because there are no clear precedents. The awareness that each step shapes destiny awakens responsibility and autonomy. It's life's silent invitation, assuming we can't control the path, but we can choose how to walk. The challenge isn't just in unknown terrain, but in the courage to remain present with each step, observing the journey's nuances. Historically, pioneers, artists, and thinkers found their greatness by breaking patterns. The untaken path reminds us that authenticity requires deliberate action, even in the face of fear. It's a living metaphor for the individuation process, where we confront the unknown, face our own limits, and reveal hidden potentials, transforming uncertainty into an opportunity for deep self-knowledge. Robert Frost immortalized this concept in his poem The Road Not Taken, showing how the decision to follow an alternative path shapes life. Choosing the less traveled isn't just symbolic. It requires renunciation and courage to give up certainties. Each alternative choice presents risks, but also the chance to create unique experiences that wouldn't be possible on the safe and predictable path. In practice, opting for uncharted trails can mean abandoning material certainties, comfortable relationships, or predictable careers. Eastern philosophies, like Taoism, teach that following the natural flow implies accepting the unknown, trusting one's own rhythm, and not clinging to fixed results. The act of walking less explored roads requires presence, flexibility, and sensitivity to perceive opportunities hidden in the unexpected. Jung reinforces that individuation requires leaving the comfort zone, facing internal fears, and exploring dimensions of the psyche not yet recognized. The road never taken, in this sense, isn't just physical, but psychological and spiritual. Each conscious step contributes to discovering talents, passions, and strengths that remain latent when we follow only already established routes, leading to full realization of our own essence. The uncharted road challenges our need for security and control. Each step requires courage and trust in our own judgment, facing uncertainties that can generate anxiety and hesitation. The paradox is that freedom emerges precisely when we accept that we can't dominate the path, only consciously decide how to traverse each stretch. It's on this unknown terrain that authenticity flourishes. By distancing ourselves from others' expectations and social conformism, we discover choices aligned with our deepest values. Philosophically, this journey teaches us that freedom and personal fulfillment aren't found in conformity, but in the willingness to walk consciously on trails that lead us to our true essence. Furthermore, the road never taken reveals that growth is inseparable from risk. Each step outside the conventional expands internal horizons, broadens perspective on the world, and allows transformative experiences that remain even in the face of challenges and uncertainties. The courage to follow the unchosen path thus becomes a catalyst for personal and spiritual evolution. And if courage allows us to follow uncharted paths, there's also a force that never consumes itself, that remains eternal even amidst difficulties, the inspiration that guides us. Thus, we arrive at the flame that does not consume, a light that burns silently within each seeker, illuminating the journey of ancient wisdom. There's something deeply hypnotic about the vision of a flame that burns without consuming itself. It defies common sense, breaks apparent laws of matter, and forces us to consider a type of energy that doesn't exhaust itself, but also doesn't destroy. It's an image that lives both in sacred texts and philosophical metaphors, a symbol of a state of being that continuously renews itself. This flame is more than a physical phenomenon. It's an archetype, a presence that indicates absolute balance between force and permanence. While common fire burns until it consumes its own fuel, this flame reveals a paradox, intensity that doesn't lead to exhaustion. In the video's context, it serves as a metaphor for the awakened mind, which can burn with lucidity without collapsing into exhaustion. And perhaps in contemplating it, we realize the mystery isn't just in the fact that it doesn't extinguish, but in what it represents: the possibility of living in a state of deep transformation without self-destructing. In physics, fire exists because there's fuel, heat, and oxygen. Remove any of them, and the flame disappears. But in symbolism, a flame that doesn't consume fuel is the representation of something that transcends material conditions. This concept appears in Moses' encounter with the burning bush in Hebrew tradition, and in legends from various cultures, where eternal fire is the guardian of secrets and initiatory tests. We can think of this flame as an idea, passion, or purpose that doesn't diminish with time, even when intensely lived. It's like mature love that doesn't exhaust itself in the initial flame of passion, but maintains constant, deep, and vital warmth. If we want to translate this to human experience, it's equivalent to a mind that burns with curiosity and clarity without wearing itself out. Something modern psychology would relate to the state of flow, and philosophy would call dynamic balance. It's the energy that sustains without consuming. This flame's paradox forces us to question our own relationship with energy and effort. We live believing that everything that burns will sooner or later go out, that every act of intensity leads to exhaustion. But what if there's a way to live with intensity without destroying ourselves in the process? Maybe the key lies in changing the type of fuel we use, trading the desire for control for a state of continuous presence. Philosophically, this flame points to a life where movement doesn't imply loss, but renewal. It's like the river that flows incessantly without ever running dry, because it's constantly fed by invisible sources. What this vision awakens is disturbing. Maybe true exhaustion doesn't come from effort itself, but from internal friction, the struggle against what we are. Once fire stops fighting against what it burns, it can simply exist. And so, as we contemplate the flame that never consumes itself, we realize that not every force needs to be visible in order to exist. There are energies that endure without being exhausted, revealing that true power is not in what is shown, but in what is silently sustained. And if the flame is the constant presence, the next step invites us to notice that which moves yet can never be seen, the invisible wind, that subtle current guiding the world without ever allowing itself to be captured. Often, what most influences our decisions and experiences isn't visible to the eye. Just like the wind we feel but can't see, subtle forces, cultural, psychological, energetic, shape thoughts, choices, and emotions in ways that escape immediate perception. Recognizing these invisible currents invites us to observe life with greater attention and awareness, realizing that not every movement depends on direct effort or absolute control. It's an invitation to perceive that the world is more than what we touch or measure, that there's depth beyond the visible and tangible. In daily life, we can feel these forces in unexpected situations. A decision that seemed trivial reveals itself as decisive. Chance encounters change directions, and intuitions arise without clear explanation. Heraclitus, with his thinking about eternal flow, already reminded us that everything is in movement, that there are invisible currents in constant transformation. The invisible wind is a metaphor for this constant mobility, reminding us that life is woven by subtle threads that connect past, present, and future. This idea challenges conventional logic, which privileges what can be seen, touched, and measured. By contemplating invisible forces, we realize that our actions rarely occur in isolation. Awareness of these currents provides us with greater sensitivity, humility, and openness to synchronicities that seem coincidental, but carry profound meaning. It's a reminder that not everything depends on brute force or explicit will. There are silent movements that shape the course of our existence. In Eastern philosophy, the concept of qi represents this vital energy that permeates and connects all things, invisible but present, like a thread linking every aspect of the universe. Jung, in turn, introduced the notion of the collective unconscious, invisible structures and patterns that shape behaviors, choices, and perceptions without us realizing it. Simple analogies help us understand. Just as wind guides a sail or moves leaves without being seen, these subtle forces conduct apparently autonomous decisions and actions. In the physical world, invisible subatomic particles demonstrate that the absence of perception doesn't imply absence of effect. Scientists observe that invisible fields and forces have real and measurable impact, showing that the invisible can be decisive. Similarly, psychological and cultural influences shape lives without us being able to detect them directly, showing that our limited perception isn't synonymous with non-existence or irrelevance. By considering invisible forces, we realize there's constant interconnection. The invisible wind doesn't just move, but also directs, influences, and shapes contexts. Aristotle, with his idea of the unmoved mover, suggested a first cause that, invisible and permanent, guides movement. This philosophical perspective expands our vision, reminding us that every gesture and decision is part of a larger network of subtle and interdependent influences. Trusting in what can't be seen challenges our modern mentality, which privileges concrete evidence and immediate results. Life, however, is also woven by invisible currents that require observation and sensitivity. Recognizing this philosophical and spiritual reality teaches us humility. Not everything depends on conscious will, and there are silent forces that shape paths, encounters, and opportunities in ways we can't predict. Psychologically, perceiving the invisible invites us to introspection and patience. By noticing the synchronicities and coincidences we often interpret as luck, we become more attentive to the subtleties of the world. Taoism and Heraclitus remind us that fluidity and adaptation are essential. Just as the invisible wind moves everything, understanding these currents allows us to navigate with more harmony, without unnecessary resistance. Spiritually, the invisible wind suggests there's guidance, even when the path seems random. This creates a fascinating paradox. Although we can't directly control invisible forces, our attention, intention, and consciousness allow us to interact with them meaningfully. Thus, accepting the presence of these subtle currents provides us with freedom and understanding, instead of frustration in the face of the uncontrollable. And if we learn to feel and respect the invisible winds that move our life, we can now focus on what we can consciously cultivate. The fertile soil of the present, where every action gains strength and meaning. It's time to explore the garden of now, a space of mindful attention, care, and deliberate manifestation. Amid the rush and excess of stimuli in the modern world, the present becomes a rare and precious resource. Each moment filled with attention transforms into fertile soil, capable of generating clarity and serenity. Cultivating the now is like tending a garden. Every thought, gesture, and sensation is a seed that, if observed with care, blossoms into full awareness. Masters of Stoicism, Buddhism, and spiritual traditions remind us that life happens exclusively in this moment, and that fullness is revealed only when we are entirely present. Slowing down and focusing on now isn't passivity, but a conscious act of presence. Every small gesture, from breathing to observing a detail in nature, becomes a practice of internal cultivation. Sufi poets like Rumi describe the present as fertile ground for the soul, while Western philosophers emphasized consciousness as the path to true inner freedom. Perceiving the moment is discovering that each instant has its own meaning. By engaging with now, we build resilience against distractions and external pressures. Life stops being a sequence of past or future events, becoming a garden that requires attention, patience, and love for what is simple and essential. Imagine a gardener who waters each plant with care, removes weeds, and observes silent growth. Cultivating now requires the same discipline, observing emotions without judgment, valuing small acts, and recognizing life's flow without clinging to the past or yearning for the future. Sufi poets like Rumi celebrated this awareness, describing the present as fertile ground where the soul finds meaning. Psychologically, the practice of mindfulness helps reduce anxiety, increase focus, and strengthen connection with ourselves. Each breath becomes an instrument of cultivation, each perception a step on the path to serenity. Eckhart Tolle and Thich Nhat Hanh emphasize that living fully in the present isn't an occasional choice, but a continuous commitment to presence and awareness. The garden of now isn't just poetic metaphor, it's living practice. Observing seed growth, feeling soil texture, or noticing a passing breeze is learning to live each instant with depth. Every act of attention becomes fertilizer for consciousness, strengthening our ability to act with clarity and compassion. The paradox of the garden of now is that mindful attention requires effort, but reveals freedom. The more we cling to the past or worry about the future, the more we distance ourselves from real life. Philosophically, it questions the modern obsession with productivity and immediate results, showing that true harvest happens when we nourish the present moment. Every cultivated instant is an act of resistance against chaos and dispersion. By dedicating conscious attention, we transform the ordinary into extraordinary. This philosophical and spiritual practice reveals that wealth isn't in accumulating, but in deeply experiencing each moment, allowing daily life to become a space of fullness. Caring for now also promotes internal alignment between mind and heart. The clarity that emerges from full presence helps make more conscious decisions, strengthens patience, and connects us to meaningful experiences. The Garden of Now teaches us that every gesture and every perception is a seed for a more serene future, even in a turbulent world. And if the present is a garden to be cultivated, time, in turn, can reveal itself as a broken clock, not lost, but suggesting its own rhythms that invite us to rediscover life in more attentive cycles. In the next segment, we'll explore the broken clock, where time stops being linear and transforms into experience. The time we measure with clocks and calendars dominates our modern life, as if every second were an obligation, every minute a demand. However, there exists another time, more subtle, that won't be trapped by hands or dates, where past, present, and future interweave in an invisible dance. In ancient traditions, from agricultural cycles to meditative practices, this time outside of time was revered, showing that life happens in rhythms that can't be captured by numbers. Perceiving this time reconnects us to the essence of existing, allowing each instant to be lived with fullness. The broken clock challenges us to contemplate life without tyranny of urgency. By distancing ourselves from obsession with productivity, we open space for experiences that don't fit in schedules, but enrich our perception. This time, outside of time, is silent, but deeply felt. Each breath, each conscious thought, each emotion becomes an internal measurement of presence and meaning. Philosophers and mystics remind us that now is the only genuine moment. Bergson spoke of lived duration, not quantitative, and Rumi described states where the mind dissolves in eternal flow. This concept challenges modern logic, because value and meaning aren't defined by immediate results, but by the depth with which we feel and experience each present instant. A clock that stopped might seem useless, but reveals hidden rhythms. Wind blowing, trees swaying, the compass of one's own heart. Living in broken time is perceiving these subtle patterns, tuning into life consciously. Psychologically, this allows us to slow down, observe thoughts and emotions without hurry, increasing clarity and creativity. Philosophically, it invites us to question the modern obsession with schedules and results, reminding us that time's true value lies in lived experience. This conscious time connects us to internal and external dimensions of life. Kierkegaard spoke of the leap of faith that requires trust in the invisible, while T.S. Eliot described moments where eternity touches the present instant. Daily analogies reinforce the idea. An evening walk, an attentive conversation, or a moment of silence, everything transforms into a measure of inner wealth, showing that slowing down isn't loss, but expansion of perception. By internalizing this perception, the broken clock stops being a symbol of limitation. It becomes a metaphor for autonomy and personal rhythm, reminding us that our experience of time is moldable, and that consciousness can transform apparently ordinary minutes into profound moments of insight. Living in time outside of time challenges our need for control and predictability. The paradox is evident. Abandoning obsession with productivity generates freedom, but requires courage to face uncertainties. Philosophically, this perception redefines success and value, indicating that living fully isn't accumulating moments, but experiencing them deeply. Psychologically, understanding that time's invisible flow is more important than external chronometer strengthens resilience and reduces anxiety. Every decision stops being measured by immediate results, becoming an opportunity for introspection and growth. The broken clock, then, reveals that time and consciousness are intimately linked, and that perceiving this relationship is a path to inner wisdom. Spiritually, time outside of time connects us to present eternity. Life stops being a sequence of tasks and becomes continuous experience of presence. The modern paradox is that slowing down increases existential wealth. By valuing the instant, we realize that each moment contains infinite potential for meaning, and if time can be felt fluidly, there are bridges that connect internal and external worlds, between reality and dream. In the next segment, we'll cross the bridge of dreams, where consciousness meets imagination and perception expands beyond the visible. Since ancient times, cultures and mystics have recognized dreams as portals to inner dimensions, capable of influencing our perception of external reality. The bridge of dreams symbolizes this crossing, a symbolic passage between what we feel, imagine, and the world we experience. It's not just fantasy, but expanded consciousness that allows intuitions and emotions to become practical guidance. By perceiving these connections, the mind becomes a space of dialogue between hidden desires and conscious choices, revealing subtle paths to self-understanding and intentional action. Historically, poets and philosophers saw dreams as symbolic maps. In ancient Greece, they were consulted as omens. In the East, contemplative practices used them for spiritual guidance. Jung described the collective unconscious as a field of archetypal patterns that emerge in dreams, offering messages that transcend individual experience. Each dream, then, can be understood as a seed of insight that, when carefully observed, blossoms into applicable understanding and wisdom. The bridge of dreams challenges us to recognize that inner life isn't separate from the external world. By crossing this space, we learn that intuition, emotion, and imagination aren't escapism, but guidance instruments. Each conscious crossing teaches us to integrate internal experiences into daily reality, cultivating clarity, resilience, and creativity. By observing dreams and visions as allies, we realize the bridge exists both to reveal the unconscious and to transform waking life. Jung emphasized that dreams aren't just random manifestations, but expressions of the unconscious that communicate archetypal patterns and deep psychic processes. They provide us with guidance and symbolic reflections that influence daily decisions, perceptions, and behaviors. Reflecting on dreams is a way to cross the bridge consciously, transforming subjective elements into practical understanding, allowing choices more aligned with our essence. Poets and mystics like Rumi described dreams as the soul's language, revealing truths that reason often can't access. Every dream symbol, every image that emerges, is a key to deciphering internal needs, repressed desires, or creative insights. Analogously, the bridge forms when we reflect on these messages. The act of meditating, recording, and interpreting dreams creates a tangible path between internal experience and external action. This crossing allows us to integrate the unconscious into practical life. By reflecting on recurring patterns and symbolic insights, we can act with greater clarity and consciousness. Thus, the bridge of dreams isn't mere poetic metaphor, but a tool of self-understanding that unites reflection, intuition, and action. Waking life becomes richer, informed by subtle signals that arise during sleep and contemplation, reinforcing the importance of recognizing and consciously crossing these internal spaces. The bridge of dreams challenges the dichotomy between reason and intuition, showing that both coexist and influence each other mutually. The more we dive into our inner world, the more capable we become of acting with discernment and creativity in the exterior. The paradox lies in trust, trusting the invisible to guide the visible, recognizing the subjective as instructive, and perceiving that our dreams aren't mere whims of the mind, but subtle guides. Psychologically, understanding recurring or intense dreams offers us self-knowledge and better decisions. Spiritually, it reinforces that dream experience is inseparable from waking reality. Dreams and daily life feed each other mutually. Ignoring this bridge would mean losing access to a rich dimension of insight, intuition, and guidance for more authentic and meaningful choices. Philosophically, crossing the bridge of dreams reminds us that consciousness is fluid, and that boundaries between internal and external are permeable. The challenge lies in cultivating attention and courage to reflect on contents that emerge during sleep or introspective moments, transforming them into real and applied learning. This process reveals that life is a constant dialogue between worlds, internal and external, and that conscious crossing strengthens integration, authenticity, and purpose. And if crossing bridges brings us closer to understanding, there are gates that require more than attention: courage, discernment, and confronting our own deepest fears. In the next segment, we'll explore the guardian of the gate, where we'll discover that each threshold has its own challenge and wisdom. The gate is more than a physical barrier. It's an ancient symbol of the threshold between the familiar and the unknown. In myths, legends, and spiritual traditions, the guardian protecting this threshold represents fear, an inevitable test for those seeking growth and transformation. Crossing requires courage, because it's precisely the confrontation with our uncertainties that reveals the hidden strength within us. Recognizing the guardian isn't about fearing the unknown, but perceiving that he's an essential part of the path to self-knowledge and consciousness expansion. By observing stories of heroes and spiritual journeys, we realize that every significant advance encounters resistance. The guardian isn't an arbitrary obstacle. He's the form that fear takes to teach us fundamental lessons. Each hesitation, each doubt, is an invitation to introspection and preparation. This silent presence, though uncomfortable, offers us the opportunity to confront internal limitations, awakening courage that previously seemed invisible, like light that gradually reveals itself among dense shadows. Historically, the idea of the guardian transcends cultures. From Cerberus in Greek mythology to the protectors of Sufi temples, fear emerges as a necessary test before accessing wisdom and treasures. In psychological context, Jung shows us that the guardian is the shadow, repressed parts of ourselves that manifest as external barriers. Confronting the gate is, therefore, both an external and internal act, a conscious movement towards self-transformation, revealing that facing fear is opening the door to genuine freedom. The guardian of the gate manifests in diverse forms, depending on the context of each individual's life. It might be an opportunity lost due to fear of failure, a relationship that requires profound honesty, or a professional choice that challenges expectations. Each situation reveals that fear isn't just an emotion, it's a warning and an invitation. Just as in mythical narratives, the test is individual and transformative, and the crossing, when successful, opens space for authentic growth and deep self-knowledge. Mythologically, guardians symbolize resistance before illumination. Cerberus, the three-headed dog, prevents passage without courage and discernment. Temple protectors challenge arrogance and impatience. Analogously, in daily life, challenges and obstacles present themselves as invisible gates, and fear, the guardian that reveals if we're ready to advance. The analogy is clear. Just as a key needs to find the correct lock, we face each gate with attention and courage to unlock latent potentialities within us. In Jungian perspective, the guardian represents the shadow that emerges as obstacle and warning simultaneously. Facing the shadow requires introspection and radical honesty. Every repressed aspect we confront transforms into knowledge. Every fear faced makes us more conscious of our own strength. In modern life, the gate is present in significant decisions, crises, and transformation opportunities, reminding us that fear isn't an enemy, but a silent ally in the journey of personal and spiritual growth. The guardian's paradox is that his existence doesn't aim to prevent, but to prepare. The more we resist, the more fear gains power. The more we face it, the more we discover the depth of our own courage. Philosophically, this teaches us that freedom isn't the absence of obstacles, but the ability to cross through them with consciousness and presence. The guardian shows that self-transformation requires confrontation with internal truths, and that fleeing delays emotional and spiritual maturity. Crossing the gate strengthens resilience and self-confidence. Psychologically, recognizing and facing the guardian reduces anxiety, increases self-perception, and allows choices more aligned with our values. Spiritually, each crossing brings us closer to a deeper understanding of life and ourselves, showing that fear, paradoxically, is a compass that points to what most needs to be conquered. Thus, the guardian's presence transforms every obstacle into an opportunity for lasting growth. By confronting fear, individuals realize that limits exist only while they're not questioned. The guardian reveals that all resistance contains potential for evolution, that facing obstacles is also discovering invisible internal capacities. Each crossing becomes an affirmation of courage, freedom, and authenticity. This paradox, fear that teaches, resistance that liberates, reflects a central truth. There's no self-transformation without courage, and there's no courage without encountering the guardian. And by crossing the gate and recognizing the guardian, we enter a silent space, full of accumulated knowledge without words, where each thought echoes with ancestral wisdom. It's time to enter the silent library, where contemplation becomes the key to accessing invisible treasures of mind and spirit. Not all knowledge is recorded in books or documents. Some wisdom remains invisible, accessible only through experience and mindful attention. Plato already suggested the world of ideas, where truth exists beyond words and material forms, waiting to be perceived by the contemplative mind. The silent library is this intangible dimension, a space of wisdom that reveals itself to those who observe attentively, whether in ancient temples or contemplative practices. Jorge Luis Borges, in his famous Infinite Library, evoked the idea of an unlimited space of books, where knowledge spreads without beginning or end, suggesting that knowledge is vast and often inaccessible to linear reasoning. Hermes Trismegistus, in turn, taught that certain truths reveal themselves only to those who seek with intention, uniting philosophy, spirituality, and practical experience. The silent library is, therefore, an invitation to perceive, contemplate, and access wisdom that transcends written records. The paradox of this space is that the more we surrender to silence and direct experience, the more knowledge emerges, without apparent effort. Each conscious step within the silent library opens doors to profound insights, allowing intuition, memory, and reflection to integrate. Thus, the absence of words becomes rich presence, and unwritten knowledge reveals itself as a hidden treasure that transforms mind and soul. Plato saw material reality as a shadow of perfect ideas, accessible only to the mind that turns toward contemplation. Similarly, the silent library isn't in physical books, but in the invisible field where experiences and reflections accumulate. Borges reminds us that this knowledge is vast, possibly infinite, and that conscious exploration is the key to extracting meaning from its complexity. Hermes Trismegistus emphasized that true knowledge combines reason, intuition, and direct experience, which reveals itself only to those who seek with attention and intention. Everyday analogies help us understand. Walking through silent corridors, observing patterns, and reflecting on symbols is like wandering through an inner garden, where each insight is a flower that blooms in silence, accessible only to full attention. In depth psychology, Jung described the collective unconscious as an archive of shared human experiences, parallel to the concept of the silent library. The integration of these elements, ideas, symbols, and experiences allows us to access unrecorded knowledge, perceiving patterns and meanings that isolated reason could never reach. Thus, the silent library becomes a living space, where learning is continuous and personal. The paradox of the silent library challenges us to reconsider the notion of knowledge and learning. In modernity, we value the accumulation of concrete and immediate information, but Plato, Borges, and Hermes Trismegistus show us that true wisdom transcends formal records. Psychologically, trusting intuition and direct experience strengthens discernment and self-confidence. Philosophically, the silent library demonstrates that isolated reason isn't sufficient. Deep knowledge arises from the balance between contemplation, reflection, and intuition. The paradox is that the more we try to control or possess knowledge, the more it reveals itself as fleeting. The more we open ourselves to silence and experience, the more it manifests. Spiritually, this space teaches us that unwritten knowledge not only complements formal knowledge, but is essential for understanding life and ourselves. Attention, silence, and experience become instruments to access invisible wisdom, revealing profound truths that transform perception, action, and consciousness. And if silent knowledge inspires us, there are also invisible forces that bind us to inertia, challenging us to act. In the next segment, we'll explore the risk of not taking risks, where stagnation reveals itself as the greatest obstacle to personal evolution. Avoiding risks might seem prudent, but remaining in the comfort zone is, paradoxically, a form of silent stagnation. Philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard warn that fear of change imprisons the soul and blocks true inner transformation. Nietzsche reminds us that courage arises when we confront the unknown, not when we settle. Paulo Coelho also emphasizes that meaningful experiences require boldness. The paradox is that often the real risk isn't in what we do, but in what we fail to try. Even small decisions we avoid can accumulate, shaping repetitive and predictable life patterns. Resistance to the unknown creates an illusory comfort, but it hides life's vitality that flows. Staying safe means giving up profound learning, experiences that could expand perception and consciousness. Each ignored opportunity is a closed door to growth and self-knowledge. Fear of uncertainty convinces us that immobility protects, but this protection is deceptive. It prevents the discovery of internal resources and hidden potentials. Living in the comfort zone is denying life's natural flow, like a river that stops flowing. Courage, paradoxically, arises precisely when we face what intimidates us, revealing paths that predictability would never show. In daily life, avoiding challenges or staying in the same old routine seems prudent, but it's an illusion. Jung teaches that individuation requires boldness, facing internal shadows and exploring new paths. Heraclitus reminded us that life is constant movement. Resisting it is denying one's very essence. Analogy: a stagnant river loses the strength and vitality that moving water provides. Thus, not taking risks is reducing one's own life to the monotony of unlived opportunities. Each risk faced reveals invisible learning. Small choices, starting a project, changing jobs, or talking to someone important, can generate profound transformations. Eastern philosophies and contemporary literature emphasize that the unknown is fertile ground for creativity and discovery. Each attempt is an act of courage that resonates internally, strengthening self-confidence and opening unexpected doors. Even seemingly trivial decisions carry impact. Risk involves not only fear of failure, but also of transformation itself. By daring, we learn to deal with uncertainty and impermanence, integrating experiences into our own life narrative. Avoiding risks prevents the development of resilience and perception of our own strength, keeping us limited to the known and predictable. The paradox of comfort is that it creates invisible insecurity, fear of the new, fear of losing, fear of oneself. Philosophy reminds us that absolute security is an illusion. Courage is the bridge to freedom and self-knowledge. Psychologically, recognizing the risks of not taking risks strengthens internal confidence and allows conscious decisions. Each bold act reveals latent potential, showing that growth doesn't happen in stagnation, but in experience. Living without taking risks limits the reach of one's own life. The comfort zone is comfortable only superficially, but can generate frustration, anxiety, and silent regret. Philosophically, this challenges the logic that avoiding pain is better than facing challenges. The paradox is that only by confronting the unknown do we feel the true vitality of existence. Furthermore, inaction creates repetitive cycles that diminish the perception of freedom. Those who don't take risks stop experiencing life's nuances, learning opportunities, and moments that could transform their path. Psychologically, this teaches that risk and growth are inseparable. The absence of risk is the absence of expansion, and if facing the unknown opens doors for us, learning to find beauty in small things reminds us that life doesn't need to be grandiose to be full. The next teaching, the flavor of simple, will guide us to appreciate everyday details as sources of meaning and profound contentment. Amid the rush, commitments, and constant search for novelties, life's small moments go unnoticed. A scent in the air, someone's gentle touch, or the silence of dawn carry profound meanings when perceived with attention. Ancient philosophers and spiritual masters, from Epicurus to Lao Tzu, emphasize that true richness isn't found in grandeur or excess, but in appreciating everyday details. Learning to savor the simple is an invitation to slow down and rediscover the depth of now. By valuing these moments, we realize that life is built from accumulated small pleasures. Each gesture, each sensation, however subtle, contributes to a fuller and more meaningful experience. The simple, when looked at with attention, reveals itself as extraordinary, teaching that the content of the present moment is more important than the volume of external events. Eastern cultures, thinkers like Epicurus, and naturalists like Henry David Thoreau emphasize that simple pleasures, lived with consciousness, generate lasting satisfaction and emotional stability. In daily practice, feeling the wind on your face, observing the sky, or sharing a sincere conversation are ways to reconnect with life's essence. Analogously, it's like tasting a fruit. Each bite offers more than nutrition. It provides experience, presence, and gratitude. Each simple act, when performed with attention, reveals subtle patterns and previously unnoticed connections. It's in contemplating the everyday that insights and genuine well-being arise, showing that life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be profound. This perspective counters modern logic that associates value only with the big, fast, and intense. The paradox of simple is that the more we seek grandeur, the more we ignore what already fulfills us. Philosophically, it teaches that happiness and fulfillment don't depend on quantity, but on attention, presence, and appreciation of what surrounds us. Psychologically, valuing small pleasures strengthens mindfulness, reduces anxiety, and creates a more intimate connection with the present. Additionally, cultivating the flavor of simple creates habits of gratitude and consciousness. Each moment lived with attention becomes an opportunity for internal transformation, reminding us that the extraordinary isn't in the quantity of experiences, but in the quality of perception we have of them. This teaching is a silent reminder that a full life is within everyone's reach, regardless of resources or status. And if small pleasures remind us of the value of now, it's time to gather all lessons, connecting courage, attention, and inspiration for the journey's pinnacle. We arrive at the last advice, where all wisdom synthesizes into a final message of transformation and presence. After traveling through centuries of reimagined wisdom, we arrive at the point of integrating each insight, paradox, and teaching into a single piece of advice. This moment is like a meditative pause atop a mountain, where one perceives the breadth of the journey traveled and the hidden unity between seemingly disconnected experiences. Each previous lesson, from attention to the present to courage in facing fear, forms an invisible network of understanding. Here, the mind is invited to rest, absorbing the mosaic of ideas that interweave. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, but perceiving patterns, parallels, and interactions between concepts, creating an inner map that guides decisions and attitudes. The sensation is of growing clarity, as if the light fragments collected in each segment finally illuminate a coherent path. This is the point where the observer can contemplate the whole, perceiving that each teaching, however paradoxical or subtle, contributes to a deeper understanding of mind and life. Reflection awakens the sensation of inner harmony, demonstrating that the synthesis of ancient and modern lessons is practical and applicable. Throughout the journey, we learned about surrender, silence, authenticity, risk, simplicity, and mindful attention. Each isolated concept is a powerful tool, but together, they form an inner language that helps calm modern anxiety and guide choices. Like a mosaic or stained glass window, fragmented pieces reveal a larger image, offering perspective and meaning. Analogously, the last advice functions as an internal compass, reminding us that not everything needs to be understood immediately. Wisdom also manifests in the slow rhythm of observation and acceptance of experience's nuances. Each fragment of insight, however small, contributes to a more complete vision of the world and oneself. This synthesis connects us with life's flow, showing that learning isn't just acquiring information, but cultivating discernment and presence. The final advice manifests as an invisible fabric that unites action, reflection, and sensitivity, promoting balance and inner depth. The last advice challenges the idea that wisdom is accumulating answers. On the contrary, it's learning to ask the right questions and answer them with attention and presence. Each daily choice, each reflective pause, becomes an opportunity to apply absorbed teachings, revealing a new rhythm of more conscious life. Philosophically, it suggests that integrating experience is more valuable than perfecting knowledge. Psychologically, it offers clarity, resilience, and emotional balance. The paradox is that by simplifying complexity, we discover depth. The more we allow ourselves to connect concepts and practices, the broader our understanding of our own interior becomes. By applying the final advice, each fragment of the journey illuminates, transforming seemingly disconnected experiences into a coherent tapestry. This integration promotes a sensation of fullness, showing that true learning is active, experiential, and deeply personal. And upon absorbing this final advice, we're invited to remain in silence and contemplation, letting the mind expand and open without closing conclusions. We arrive at the final echo, where the journey finds its meditative rest, allowing each insight to reverberate gently in consciousness. At the end of every knowledge journey, there's an instant when words quiet and intellect withdraws, leaving only pure consciousness. The final echo is this moment of suspension, where nothing needs to be resolved or concluded. It's the pause that allows each insight to breathe and resonate internally, inviting the mind to remain open and receptive. In this space, the experience of wisdom becomes sensory and intuitive, as if each thought floated freely before dissolving into silence. Allowing oneself in this state is recognizing that understanding doesn't need endings. Each lesson traveled finds space to reverberate, revealing subtle connections and awakening unexpected perceptions. The final echo, therefore, doesn't close the experience. It transforms it into something continuous and fluid, inviting the mind to explore unhurriedly in a presence that transcends time. By opening to the final echo, we accept that wisdom isn't summarized in concrete answers, but in the capacity to feel, perceive, and contemplate. Each memory, each insight, and each emotion accumulated throughout the journey finds a place to exist, creating an internal space where the mind can rest and reflect, free from limitations or judgments, while remaining attentive to being's infinite flow. Imagine a cave where each word spoken previously still vibrates gently on the walls, creating reverberations that remain beyond hearing. Thus is the final echo, an internal resonance that doesn't demand immediate analysis, only silent perception. Analogously, it's like hearing wind among trees or a river's murmur, subtle signals that exist independently of our interpretation, but that profoundly enrich our experience. Contemplative practices from different traditions reinforce this idea. Buddhist meditations, Sufi presence exercises, and mindfulness techniques emphasize that meaning arises when the mind remains receptive without seeking ready answers. Psychologically, this openness allows experience integration, reduces anxiety, and promotes mental clarity, offering a state of mindful attention that remains even after the meditative session. In philosophy, the final echo reminds us of impermanence and the fluidity of all things. Each absorbed insight becomes part of a continuous flow, reminding us that comprehension and wisdom aren't destinations, but processes in constant expansion. The mind, by remaining open, finds harmony between past, present, and potential future, creating an experience of internal unity that transcends linear time. The paradox of the final echo is that the more we let go, the more clarity we gain. By abandoning the need for conclusion, we open space for intuition, imagination, and spontaneous insight. Philosophically, this challenges the modern obsession with definitive answers, showing that true understanding is dynamic, not static. Psychologically, remaining in the final echo strengthens resilience and reduces stress, allowing the mind to reconnect with its natural quietude. Each thought, sensation, or emotion can be observed without judgment, transforming the perception of everyday events into continuous learning. This posture strengthens awareness of self and surroundings, generating internal balance even amid external chaos. Spiritually, the final echo suggests that the learning journey never ends. Each insight echoes infinitely, revealing new connections, new questions, and new possibilities. By remaining receptive, human beings align with a greater intelligence, perceiving that each instant contains transformative potential, even when there are no visible answers or clear conclusions. And thus, we remain in the reverberation of these ancient and modern echoes, ready to live each instant with consciousness and fullness, carrying the flame that never consumes itself. The journey continues, silent, timeless, and infinitely rich.